What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Wrestling Makes the World Takes. I'm your host, CB, flying solo, taking you back to talk all things WCW in the year 2001's and the final months of World Championship Wrestling. 2001 was undoubtedly one of the most dramatic and tumultuous years in the history of professional wrestling. So buckle up. We're about to unravel the dramatic twists and turns that shaped the wrestling landscape during one of the most pivotal eras in wrestling history. It's November 2001 in Greensboro, North Carolina for what would be the annual WWE Survivor Series pay-per-view event. This year carried a unique stipulation. Why are we talking about a WWE pay-per-view on a WCW-focused show? Well, this event marked the final time the WCW branding was used for a sanctioned pro wrestling event as a standalone organization and as a storyline faction, officially marking the end of a significant era in professional wrestling. The event featured multiple title versus title unification bouts, merging championships from rival companies, capped off by a winner-take-all 5-on-5 elimination bout featuring Team Alliance of WCW and ECW of wrestlers against a team of WWE wrestlers in a battle for brand supremacy. The pay-per-view concluded with The Rock eliminating Stone Cold Steve Austin's bringing end to the Invasion storyline, the Alliance faction, and WCW subsequently for good. Ironically, the event took place at the Greensboro Coliseum, which is where the first ever Starrcade event took place in 1983, along with many other iconic WCW events over the years. WCW Thunder kicked off the new year and built toward the first ever WCW Sin pay-per-view event in Indianapolis, Indiana. The storylines at the time focused on Ric Flair as the on-screen babyface CEO of WCW, looking to bring justice and opportunity to the roster and wrangle WCW World Heavyweight Champion at the time, Scott Steiner, who was wreaking havoc on the locker room and taking out the likes of fan favorite Sting and Booker T at any cost. Flair announced that Steiner would be defending the title in a four-way bout, including current rivals Sid Vicious, Jeff Jarrett, and a mystery opponent. This time period featured several promising young talents on television, including the Natural Born Thrillers and 3 Count. Backstage, financial troubles continued, ratings continued to decline, morale was down overall amidst fierce competition from the WWE. Compared to just 2 years prior, the organization was a shadow of its former self. So how did we get here? Let's go back to 1988. Ted Turner acquired World Championship Wrestling from Jim Crockett. At the time, WCW flourished in the early 90s thanks to stars like Goldberg, Sting, Ric Flair, and Lex Luger. The launch of WCW Monday Nitro in 1995 revolutionized wrestling, and the NWO storyline became a cultural phenomenon. For 83 consecutive weeks, WCW prevailed in the ratings and unseated the WWE as the #1 pro wrestling promotion in the world. In 1997, the WWE would have a creative renaissance with the introduction of the Attitude Era, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and edgier programming that captivated the desired 18 to 49 age demographic. With oversight from Time Warner, creative restrictions, and management. In 2001, Eric Bischoff, who took the helm of WCW and guided them to the pinnacle of the industry, formed a partnership with Brian Bedall and Fusion Media Ventures and put in a bid to purchase World Championship Wrestling from Time Warner.
Good morning, everybody. This morning we announced to our staff that Turner Broadcasting, Time Warner, has sold WCW World Championship Wrestling, Inc. to Fusion Media Ventures. The Fusion Media Ventures is a partnership headed and formed by Brian Bedall and Steve Greenberg, who many of you may have known or know from Classic Sports, which they founded, started, and later sold to ESPN. There's been a lot of rumors over the course of the last 6-7 months about what we are going to do with WCW, and the funny thing is that we never went out to sell WCW, but as the rumors started to fly, various parties had come to us inquiring, can we partner with them? Was there any opportunities? And as we spoke, and we needed to speak to all of them and see what they wanted to do, Fusion clearly rose to the top. We liked their entrepreneurial spirit. They had a great track record building businesses, running them smartly, running them efficiently. They really got a quick grasp for this business, and partnering with Eric and bringing him as a partner on the WCW venture made a lot of sense.
This new ownership group vowed to give the company a complete overhaul from the ground up and new life to the organization. In January, WCW was headed to Indianapolis to prevent their first ever WCW Sin pay-per-view event, with an intriguing card of storylines, including the rise of Shane Helms as a single star challenging for the WCW Cruiserweight title. The switching of teams within the Natural-Born Thrillers, putting Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare against the insiders of Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash for the WCW Tag Team titles. Goldberg putting his career on the line in a tag team bout against Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger. The main event featured Scott Steiner defending the WCW Heavyweight Championship against Sid Vicious, Jeff Jarrett, and the soon-to-be-unveiled Mystery Man. The event ended in tragedy as challenger Sid Vicious suffered a gruesome leg injury during the main event, attempting to jump off the second rope. The match was forced to end early, right after the Mystery Man revealed himself to be Road Warrior Animal, leading to a Ric Flair heel turn and joining forces with Scott Steiner to form the Magnificent Seven faction. During this time, another rival, Hammer Eric Bischoff, and the Fuchsia Media team came to an agreement with Time Warner to purchase World Championship Wrestling and made the public announcement to acquire the company. Questions remain with a new look, fresh roster, and signal a new era emanating from the joint at Hard Rock in Las Vegas as their new studio home. With the close of ECW, several former talents were rumored to join the newly revamped WCW, including former ECW World Heavyweight Champion Steve Corino and Joey Styles. The restart of the promotion was set for May with the Big Bang pay-per-view event. On television, the Magnificent Seven continued their reign of destruction on the WCW roster and began to build a new rivalry between WCW Heavyweight Champion Scott Steiner and Kevin Nash, with the challenge for the title scheduled to take place at Super Bowl Revenge in Nashville, Tennessee later in the month. In March, a spotlight was added to the Cruiserweight division, bringing in the likes of former ECW talent Jason Jett and Kid Cash, and the debut of the young AJ Styles. With the tournament to crown the first ever WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions and young high-flying talent, the quality of matchups improved. But would it be enough of a saving grace for the company? In an earth-shattering announcement, television executive Jamie Kellner decided that despite agreeing to sell WCW to Eric Bischoff and Fuchsia Media Ventures, he would no longer carry WCW programming on the Turner television networks. The decision ultimately led to the collapse of the deal between Time Warner and Fuchsia Media Ventures. On television, with much uncertainty within the organization, WCW held their first ever WCW Greed pay-per-view event from Jacksonville, Florida, later that month. The event featured the crowning of the new WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team Champions, the return of Dusty Rhodes to the organization, Booker T returning to action to win the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship, and Scott Steiner defeating Diamond Dallas Page and continuing his championship run. What did the future hold for WCW? On the March 19th edition of Nitro in Gainesville, Florida, WCW's fate would be unveiled as Eric Bischoff called in to WCW Nitro to make an announcement that the deal to purchase the company was off, and the final week's edition of Nitro would feature a night of champions, with each of the WCW championships on the line in the season finale of Nitro. The question now is, if Eric Bischoff was out, who would be the new owner of World Championship Wrestling? The new owner was none other than Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation. A few days after Eric Bischoff's announcement, the news broke that the WWF, now known as the WWE, would be purchasing the assets of WCW, leading to a lot of speculation as to what would the WWE do with the organization. Would it be shut down? Would it be kept running as a subsidiary brand? What would happen to the roster? Only time would tell. On March 26, WCW held the final edition of Monday Nitro from Panama City Beach, Florida, during their annual spring break tradition, with a stacked card and a lot of surprises both on camera and behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, WWE officials were in attendance to run the final production, which featured a first-time ever simulcast between the two rival promotions. On television, Vince McMahon in character teased shutting down the promotion throughout the telecast, before Shane McMahon made a shocking revelation at the end of the broadcast that he had purchased the organization and set up an on-screen WWE versus WCW rivalry. An anticipated dream scenario that many fans had clamored for over the years. The show had housed several memorable moments, including Booker T ending the 4-month reign of terror of Scott Steiner and the Magnificent Seven, capturing the WCW World Heavyweight Championship once again and pairing it with the United States Heavyweight title that he had just won from Rick Steiner. What was to come next? No one could have guessed. April 1st, 2001, Houston, Texas, the site of WrestleMania X7. Less than a week out from the storyline angle of Shane McMahon buying WCW out from under his father's nose, the father and son would face off in a brutal street fight with Shane McMahon prevailing. Prior to the bout, a group of WCW roster members made a cameo appearance from a skybox at the Houston Astrodome. The next move for WCW under the guise of WWE relaunched the promotion with a new look and a television show with a Saturday night late time slot on TNN, the network that broadcasted WWE Raw at the time. While the WCW roster that was brought in under the umbrella of the WWE featured many talented young stars such as Shane Helms, Billy Kidman, Chuck Palumbo, and Sean O'Haire, many of the marquee names that established WCW as a significant power player in the industry, were absent. Ultimately, the new WCW TV show never came to fruition. Instead, contracted performers from the promotion began appearing on WWE programming, attacking talent, and setting up a storyline invasion angle between the two companies, including Diamond Dallas Page debuting to challenge The Undertaker at a King of the Ring pay-per-view event, and WCW champion Booker T making a surprise appearance at the same show to attack Stone Cold Steve Austin. As a pilot, WCW began running WCW-branded matches on WWE programming, beginning with the infamous Booker T vs. Buff Bagwell World Title match in Tacoma, Washington on Raw. The WWE would hold a few more WCW-branded matches on WWE television. Many forgettable, however, there were some bright spots, like Billy Kidman challenging Shane Helms for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship and capturing the title. The two would end up going on to have solid runs in WWE over the next few years, especially Helms, who would eventually become the beloved Hurricane character. What was next for the reimagined WCW brand? Without a dedicated television show or a star-studded roster with depth or momentum, the promotion appeared to be at a crossroads. Perhaps an extreme makeover was in store. Toward the end of the event, a returning Rob Van Dam would face off against Rhino, appearing to set up a future program between the two for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship at the Living Dangerously pay-per-view in March. 6 days later, ECW held its final live event in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. July 9th, 2001, in Atlanta, Georgia, the Invasion pay-per-view was set for Cleveland, with WWE going head-to-head with WCW. As the storyline conflict between the two promotions continued to unfold, WWE would make a major pivot in direction for the involvement of the WCW brand. During a brawl on television, Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer from ECW would appear on the show, attacking several wrestlers, appearing to set up a conflict between both WWE and WCW. By the end of the episode, WCW had aligned with ECW under the guidance of Shane McMahon, and now Stephanie McMahon as the new owner of WCW. In reality, this effort would attempt to bolster WCW's roster of stars and make them more of an on-screen threat to the WWE. At the Invasion pay-per-view, in a shocking turn of events, Stone Cold Steve Austin turned on his WWE teammates and joined the newly established alliance of WCW and ECW. This would set up an ongoing feud between the Stone Cold Steve Austin-led faction and the WWE led by Kurt Angle and The Rock. What started out in the spring as a renaissance for the legendary WCW promotion has now turned into a distant detail in the heavily influenced WWE star-studded storyline. The summer would also see the rise of Rob Van Dam, who a few months prior was on the ECW's final pay-per-view event with an uncertain future, now is a promising star of the WWE, featured in a prominent position on television. By the fall of 2001, WWE was merely a logo that appeared occasionally on a t-shirt or a flashing graphic on the Titantron. The promotion that at one point dominated the cable television ratings for 83 consecutive weeks was now a faint memory. The hope for an illustrious rebirth of the promotion with the dream matchups that fans had craved for years was all but a lost cause. November 18th, 2001, Greensboro, North Carolina. The Survivor Series signaled the end of the WCW brand, an end of an era and a major shift in the professional wrestling landscape. 1 month later, at the WWE Vengeance pay-per-view event, the WCW Championship would be unified with the WWE Championship, crowning Chris Jericho as the first ever undisputed champion. WCW's featured attraction, the NWO, made a brief return to the WWE, and even one of WCW's main championships, the United States Championship, is still active to this day with the same recognized lineage. Since closing down more than 2 decades ago, WCW remains alive through video libraries, merchandise, memorabilia, podcasts, and documentaries. What are your thoughts on WCW's final year? How would you have booked the invasion angle? Did WWE give up too soon on the WCW brand? Join the conversation with us on social media and share your thoughts. And thank you for tuning in. This is CB for Wrestling Makes the World Takes. We'll see you next time.